All right. The local government committee will come back to order. First up, we're going to take up Senate Bill 697, Senator Van Valkenburg.
Okay, so first we need to move the substitute.
There's a motion on the substitute. There's a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay. Substitute's before us. And you have an amendment to the substitute?
We need to make a line amendment that was supposed to be in the substitute. We just got our wires crossed. Time of the year.
We'll read through the amendment.
So I'll have council read it to y'all.
Mr. Chairman, on line 81, after facility, you will say, unless the total area under panels exceeds 4% of the total area within the county.
So can we move that amendment?
I'm sorry, can you redirect the microphone a little bit and repeat that amendment so make sure all the committees heard that?
Mr. Chairman, on line 81, after facility, you'll say, unless the total area under panels exceeds 4% of the total area within the county.
So can we move that?
Is there a motion on that amendment? So moved. All right, there's a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? The amendment is now adopted to the substitute.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'll keep it brief on the front end because I know there's people that are going to want to talk about it, and there might be questions as well. You've probably heard of this bill. It's called the ban on bans. I don't actually necessarily like that phrasing. It's about citing solar. I think the better way of putting this is that it says that localities have to have a process in place. It says that it can be restrictive. It can be not restrictive. It says that the localities have to have a process in place for solar developers, for folks that want to do solar, so that people can build solar. And I think the reason we need this bill is a couple-fold. One is we have energy goals within the state that we need to meet. I think the second reason we need this is just outside of those goals. We're moving into a different energy world, and we need to have a process by which we can get there. And if we don't have a process, it's going to be increasingly difficult, and that's going to require harsher state action. And the goal of this is to get us in a place where localities, like I said, can have a wide array of policies on how they do this. They just have to have a policy so that we can start building out. There's two amendments in here within the substitute and then the amendment because we just, one is just making sure it's on lines 88 and 89 where we added that nothing in the section limits a locality's authority to establish criteria and requirements for siting, including those related to tree cover and stormwater management that are otherwise in compliance with this subsection, to kind of make explicit what I think was implicit in the bill, that the localities have a lot of wiggle room here under their local control. And then the second change was the amendment that we just adopted, which said, once you get to 4% of coverage, then you can put limits on the amount, right? You can do it at that point. And so I'll stop there in the name of time and the fact that I know we're going to have a bunch of people talking on this, and go from there.
All right. Questions for the patron? Senator Rome.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, first, just ask the patron. First, I just want to say thank you to the patron for including the tree cover and stormwater management parts. I specifically requested that as this is definitely going to be something that affects my district, and this is something that I have to be extremely cognizant of. I do want to know from the patron, though, Mr. Chair, basically where the 4% number came from in terms of overall coverage area. 4% can be a very large amount of land for some of our localities, and basically what's the genesis of that? And beyond that, is there a reason that utility solar has to have that much allowance and leeway before localities would basically have an additional ability to step in?
Yeah, so the first thing I would note is it's up to 4%, but that doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to have to do 4%, right? I think it's important to note that. They could have, going through the policies they have, they don't have to, right? It's not like they have to say, voila, here's 4%. So I want to make sure that that's clear to folks. Secondly, I'll kind of defer to Patrick on the 4% number itself. So if you want to.
Yeah. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Patrick Cushing on behalf of American Clean Power Association. The 4% was a little bit of a back of the envelope calculation. What we did is we took some of the counties that had some of the most solar development in the Commonwealth, and I think we're seeing about 2 or 3%. And so we left a little bit of wiggle room in there. And again, I'll just repeat what the senator said, is this doesn't mandate an outcome under 4%. We're just saying that landowners should have an opportunity to present projects without being barred by ordinance from even presenting a project. But we do recognize that the volume of projects in a county may hit a point where a county, should be able to say by ordinance, no more. And so we're trying to weigh that balance between the landowner and the interest of the counties in this bill.
Senator Rome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, for Mr. Cushing here. In particular, I want to address one of the things that came up in the local government impact part, where we heard the most critique that we got was from Rappahannock, and obviously, rural locality, and very gorgeous to ever drive through Rappahannock, really nice area. But I just wanted to read what they wrote and basically ask how the 4% part would actually either allay some concerns that they have or play into some of them. So they wrote that Rappahannock County has a comprehensive plan that purposely encourages low growth and a steady state economy. The provisions of this bill practically eliminate local permitting control of utility scale solar projects. The county currently allows this type of project if and only if certain acreage and site density metrics are met. The bill as written would prohibit this and therefore eliminate our ability to determine which land, likely prime agricultural land, would be converted into utility solar scale. And they kind of go on from there. But just would the witness be able to basically talk about the 4% permitting, how that aligns with or contradicts Rappahannock's concerns?
I don't know that Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I don't know that the 4% directly addresses the concerns raised by Rappahannock County, but I think in the underlying bill, what we're leaving is a lot of leeway for counties to set the metes and bounds of what they want in a project. So setbacks, obviously tree cover, other components of a project that are not simply just, if I'll use an example that we're trying to address is if a county came in and said, no project can exceed 1 megawatt or 5 acres. That leaves zero opportunity for utility scale solar. By addressing those caps, what we want to do is leave the leeway for counties to be able to pick the projects that are right for them and have the opportunity for landowners to come and present those projects. And so again, it's a little bit of a balancing act, and we're trying to find a middle ground, I think, with authority for the county to pick the right projects without being able to say simply no solar.
Senator Hackworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and question for the patron. So being a local government advocate and serving local governments, but also a property rights advocate as well, I just want to understand this substitute because I'm just seeing it, and I want to just clarify that this is the way that I'm reading it. So there is still myriad of ways that local governments can deny these projects. This is just saying that they can't come in and say no solar farms in our county. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, I'd say that's correct.
Okay, yeah. And I'll speak to the bill when time comes.
Okay, thank you. Those in favor of Senate Bill 69, please come forward, state your name, organization, and support.
Sure. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I'm Maura Cyphers with the American Clean Power Association. We're here in strong support of Senate Bill 697. Utility scale solar is critical to meeting Virginia's clean energy goals, and I think we feel like the final posture of this bill strikes a fair balance between ensuring localities have the authority they need to grow and develop in a way that makes sense for their communities, while at the same time keeping us on track and positioning Virginia to be a leader on solar and reap the economic development benefits that come with the energy transition. So thanks very much.
Great, thank you. Next speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. David Murray, representing the Mid-Atlantic Renewable Energy Coalition Action. We are here strongly supporting the bill from a personal property rights perspective, just because a neighbor 5 miles down the road from you has leased their land to solar development. You should have the opportunity to do so as well. And this bill ensures that counties still retain the opportunity to set conditions and give an approval or denial of a solar project. And I'll make one other point, is that earlier this year, PJM, the regional grid manager for this state and 13 others, indicated that we're going to have to keep existing traditional energy generators online past their scheduled retirement because we cannot build new energy resources quickly enough. And one of the primary reasons they cited was siting challenges. And so I urge a favorable vote. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Greg Habib from Gentulak here on behalf of AEU and SEIA. Let me address a couple things that were said because they were the exact right questions to ask. So to Senator Rome's question, that's the fundamental question of this bill. Does it or does it not take away localities' permitting authority? And the unequivocal answer is it does not. The only thing it says is you can't preemptively ban or cap via ordinance. It does not say you have to approve projects. You can reject every single project if you want to. You can direct not to affect prime ag soils, not to affect core timberlands, all of those sorts of things. It just requires the political process. Mr. Chairman, as Senator Hackworth pointed out, the reality is this bill is not about solar developers. It's about landowners. It's a property rights question. When a locality says you as a landowner can no longer use your land preemptively to its highest and best use, that becomes a jurisdiction-wide downzoning.
Mr.
That's
Chairman.
a massive taking.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Stanley.
I'd like to ask Mr. Habib a question, if I could. Mr. Habib, you recall when we were younger legislators, when we came in together, one of the biggest issues that we had in front of us was that a landowner had probably the largest deposit of uranium underground and wanted to make the best use they possibly could. And the locality preemptively did not want that. And we decided that issue here in that legislature at that time over a couple of years, that the locality could say no, because we as a legislature did not lift the ban on uranium mining. So this seems kind of counterintuitive from that argument. Help me understand why a county cannot say for itself in terms of usage of land without interfering with property rights to a degree, can say this is not a part of our comprehensive plan. So we're either going to not have it or limit its use.
Yeah.
Especially, and then how could Pennsylvania say no to uranium?
Yep. So, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
If it's a landowner's prerogative here.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, landowners' prerogatives aren't totally unrestricted. Both the state and the localities have an interest in how land is developed. When they downzone or remove an existing right from you, that's an illegal downzoning. It becomes a taking. Now, whether or not the Pennsylvania uranium issue was in fact a legal taking, I think there was a good debate on both sides of that question, whether or not it was. The issue that we have is it democratic? Is it respecting property rights to not hear individual landowners' interest in developing their property? Again, they don't have to approve development. They simply have to hear the proposal.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Stanley.
Mr. Chairman, and so in striking that balance, though, because a local government is not just a local government, it's a community. It represents the community. And the community comes together and says, we don't want this to be in our county. Should they not have the right to make that determination for themselves? Or do we force on them, you have to?
Yeah,
You
Mr.
have
Chairman.
to. And where would we have been if we as a legislature had done the same for uranium mining in Pennsylvania County?
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, again, nothing in this bill requires one solar panel to be installed in any jurisdiction. Not one solar panel anywhere. The only thing this bill says is you can't have an ordinance to preempt the application to have your development heard. That's all the bill does. And it has that very reasonable restriction of you can have a cap once you hit that 4% under panel number. And so it is simply a property rights question. Should a landowner in a jurisdiction have the right for his or her political leaders to hear a proposal to develop their land? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Beebe. Next speaker.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Victoria Higgins, Chesapeake Climate Action Network. As we've heard, there are myriad reasons to support this bill. I'm going to give a climate perspective. And in our view, this is one of the most important climate bills of this session. We are working on just an incredibly tight timeline to get all the clean energy infrastructure that we need up and running so that we can turn off the fossil fuel tap in time. And that means over a gigawatt of solar a year. We've been doing about half that for the last 2 years. Frankly, we don't have a single day to spare, let alone another year to punt on this issue. A famous climate advocate said, winning slowly on climate is the same thing as losing. And I understand this isn't easy. We've heard some healthy debate here. But the bill before you, particularly with the amendments before you, we see as a pretty soft touch to move the needle on a major barrier to climate progress. And I'll note we're advocating for numerous bills this year that will increase our ability to do rooftop and small-scale solar resources so that urban areas do their part too. But we have majorities here that are really interested in meeting our clean energy goals. And if we can't do this, I'm not sure how we can expect some of our peer states to do this. So we're on the world stage with some of these issues, and I think it's critical that Virginia continues to lead on climate. And so I strongly urge the committee to report the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Mr. Chair and members of the committee, my name is Trias Lockwood, representing the Chesapeake Solar and Storage Association. We represent over 100 solar industry members regionally. We support the bill. We think it'll give the industry positive assurances to come to Virginia and stay here to develop projects. Thank you.
Thank you. Any online? Okay. Those in opposition to Senate Bill 697, Mr. Lurch.
Shocker, huh? Good morning. Joe Lurch, Virginia Association of Counties. One of the things that I want to really make clear here is that our counties have been stepping up and working with developers on making approvals for solar. One of the things that I haven't gotten to everyone with you on, this is information that we got just last week from the Virginia Department of Energy, and I'll share these copies. It shows that over the last 8 to 9 years, in the 1 megawatt and above range, and let me know you, that above range goes to 800 megawatts in Charlotte County, we've approved 259 projects. And actually, this is an underestimation because they can't track everything that goes on. I'll note that Fairfax County doesn't have one on here, but you have 5 megawatts that you approved on your local landfill. So that's roughly 260 projects totaling nearly 12,000 megawatts of capacity that the locals have approved. We think that this bill is a solution in search of a problem that doesn't exist. I will note that Mr. Murray brought up this issue of PJM and the demand. That's almost changing the goalposts because what the Virginia Clean Economy Act calls for is, I think, about 16,000 megawatts within the Dominion territory and about 600 megawatts in the APCO territory. What the latest Dominion IRP showed, to meet demand, even if they did twice as much as what's in the Virginia Clean Economy Act, because of all the demand for energy and because of that energy needing to be 24/7, they would still need to do other dispatchable type of energy. So when we meet with our members about this, and we met with them last week, they were very concerned about this. One of the questions they had is, how much land is enough? Senator Stanley, you mentioned Pittsylvania County. 4% in Pittsylvania County is 37 square miles. We think Pittsylvania County should have the authority to decide, with the input of their landowners and their citizens, in balancing those property rights of everybody, on what that should be. And that's why we respectfully oppose this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Mr. Chair, committee, my name is Cliff Williamson. I'm the Executive Director of the Virginia Agribusiness Council. We oppose this bill as it feels like an opportunity for larger interests to come into these small communities and impact rural plans, long-term decisions, and our ability in the agricultural space to provide. So we oppose this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Mr. Chairman, Jim Riddell, I represent the Virginia Cattlemen's Association, and we probably own and rent and lease much of the landscape across the Commonwealth of Virginia that you see. It's in green grass and pasture and hay. And I bring the point that Virginia Association of Counties produced to you a minute ago. There's a lot of talk about less than 5,000 megawatts that's going on out there, but there's actually 11,635 megawatts out of that 16,000 goal that the General Assembly set, 2020, I believe. We see this as an issue about land use at the local level, a local board of supervisors. The the people closest to the citizens need to continue those situations. So we oppose the bill, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Kyle Shreve. I'm speaking on behalf of the Virginia Farm Bureau Federation. We're also in opposition to the bill. 61% of the large-scale solar facilities have been placed in Southside or Central Virginia, or what we lovingly call the wood basket of Virginia. In 2021, over 90% of permitted projects were on farm and forest land. If a locality cannot implement a local comprehensive plan on the amount, density, or size, that's basically your comprehensive plan, and it seriously is detrimental to our efforts in land conservation, and for those reasons we oppose the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. Don't be shy. Let's get closer to the mic so we can make sure everyone has an opportunity to speak for the next 2.5 minutes.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Vivian C., County Attorney, County Administrator in King and Queen County, and speaking to you today on behalf of the Rural Solar Development Coalition. Our consortium, the RSDC, consists of 15 rural localities. The vast majority, well, we have, our members have developed or are in the process of developing the vast majority of the projects of which you have which have been described to you. We work closely together to support the smart development of solar projects in our respective counties. Our group has been innovators in the development and use of siting agreements to meet the needs of the underserved citizens of our counties, while making sure that our counties are wholly provided for during the entire life cycle of the project. I would share with you that our counties enjoy a collaborative and positive relationship with the solar developers at the moment, but that I think would be undermined by mandates such as what is in this bill, which we oppose. I understand that there is language for an out, if you will. There's no compulsion to approve projects, but I would also suggest that if this bill were to go forward, that would be a very small step to make it a compulsion, and so that is, which should never happen in the state code. These decisions should be and should remain local decisions exclusively. I would share that our members, as you have heard, have over 10,000 acres under development or approved at least, over 1,000 megawatts of power approved already, and we want to continue the positive relationship. And just two technical issues I'll share about the language of this bill. The 4%, I note that it applies only to counties, so in the interest of equity, and I would suggest that should include cities and towns as well. And also, in the interest of transparency in legislation, and I'm a big advocate of that with FOIA and in other contexts, if a locality is not compelled to approve projects and they want to state on the face of their ordinance that there is a limit, there is no better way to be fully transparent. Thank you.
All right, the time has been exhausted. I'm just kidding. Come on, keep on. But please keep.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Susan Seward speaking today for the Virginia Forest Products Association. Our concern really is the development in the wood basket, and I think it's important to know that of the top 10 solar localities, 6 of those localities, Charlotte County, Pittsylvania, Halifax, Louisa, Brunswick, and Buckingham, also occupy those spots on the top 10 forest harvest localities per the Department of Forestry. There is a direct competition in the wood basket for wood to supply sawmills, paper mills, and land for solar. We are headed for a train wreck in the wood basket. You cannot have the top 6 counties for solar also being the top 6 counties for wood harvesting in the state of Virginia. It is simply not sustainable.
I want to clarify.
Senator Aird.
Thank you. I want to clarify this concern. Can you please make it plain to me how this specific legislation prevents the further development of the wood basket that you're making reference to?
It doesn't prevent the development, but it is putting an increasing strain on it.
How? Mr. Chairman, how?
Senator,
Because we have tens of thousands of acres already in solar in Charlotte, Halifax, Pennsylvania, Brunswick, Buckingham. That is also, according to the 2023 data we just got from the Department of Forestry, those same counties are in the top 10 harvest counties where loggers have pulled wood for the sawmills and for the paper mills. So you're losing land to solar that will not stay in forest harvesting, replanting, and harvesting. It's being permanently set aside to solar. At the same time, these are historically the counties where Department of Forestry has tracked the most significant wood removal to support the forest products industry. So you've got competing interest in the same physical localities.
good. Thank you.
Thank you very much. For those reasons, we oppose the legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Eldon James on behalf of the Virginia chapter of the American Planning Association. Very briefly, we fear that this will disincentivize the use of legislation this body overwhelmingly passed in 2020 that created a negotiated framework, and it will take away the incentive for the solar developer to meet with and work out a negotiated agreement that many of the projects you've heard about were approved under. And that takes the negotiation, the citizen, and the county out of the process. And we would encourage you not to report this bill.
Senator Schumann.
What you said?
Thank you. Can you repeat the question?
Oh, pardon me. You said that this takes the county out of the process. Doesn't this still have to get approved by the county?
Yeah, the bill that was approved in 2020 established 15.2.2316.6 through 2316.9, which allowed for what is commonly referred to as a host agreement. That is a negotiated process between the jurisdiction and the developer, and usually it's done in a very open way. We're fearful that this would have a chilling effect on the desire of the developer to even enter that process.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Thank you. Good morning. Lauren Gilbert, representing Stafford County. Our views align with VACO's views in opposition to the bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Corey Connors with the Virginia Forestry Association. So there were some points that were made by the Forest Products Association earlier and the Farm Bureau that we also agree with. We also represent a number of interested landowners, and we are a private property rights landowner organization. Senator Aird had asked a question with respect to kind of why this is happening and with respect to sourcing. Through 2021, there was some analysis. 62% of the solar development, utility scale solar development happening in Virginia is happening on previously forested lands. Forest landowners are getting the bejesus taxed out of them. I apologize for the language, but they really don't have a choice. The fact that 62% has been converted is a symptom of what you see with taxation, what you see with the cost of ownership, what you see with the cost of owning land. And it's not a revenue source that comes frequently with that, right? You're getting income at harvest. You're not getting income, 30 years on a pine plantation. Whether it's hardwood, it's an 80, 100-year rotation. So where this development is happening is in the forest. I joke sometimes when I stand up here that trees are the answer. I'm actually turning that into a question now. Are trees the answer? There's language in here about tree canopy. Again, this is where this is happening. So I don't know that this is the solution. I just wanted to kind of come up here, clear that up, and answer that question.
Great. Thank you. Next speaker.
Good morning. I'll keep it short. I'm Jackie Lifford, representing Prince George County today. We strongly oppose this bill. We believe that the state's imposition of an arbitrary acreage size for solar projects sets a bad precedent for land use and planning. We mirror similar concerns of Rappahannock and Vaco. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Senator Van Valk, we have a few people in the queue. So first up, we got maybe 4 and growing. So Sturtevant, Senator Sturtevant, and then you can
all of that first. I don't have to. I can wait.
You can do that with the close. Senator Sturtevant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question. So this bill would prohibit a locality from prospectively by local ordinance banning solar. It sounds like. Do we know, are there any localities in the Commonwealth that have these bans on the books? And do we know how many and which ones?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Sturtevant, the answer is yes. I think I've got a printout of those, but in talking points that I handed out to many of the committee members, we've identified, I think it's 7 or 8, 9. They range from 1% of area of the county to specific acreage caps to no 2 projects can be within 5 miles of each other. 2 counties have just said no further development. I've got some are acreage, some are megawatts, some are percentage of developable land. So there's a couple of different approaches that counties have taken to address really the same issue, which is no more by ordinance.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Sturtevant.
And so I think it sounds like there are 2 localities that just have outright bans, and then the others have sort of shades of that. Functional bans? Okay.
Yeah.
And so I guess my sort of conclusory question is...
Senator Sturtevant.
It gives feedback. If voters in a locality elect a board of supervisors or a city council and they're running on a platform that they don't want any more solar, shouldn't that factor into this and be something that's respected? And we'd basically be, as the General Assembly, saying, no, you can't do that, even if that's a platform that they run on and something that they care about in that locality.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think the answer to that question is again, looking at the balance between the rights of individual landowners to at least present a project to the local government. The local government can still fulfill, the individually elected members can still fulfill commitments that they've made in the campaign to citizens when they get elected, that they don't want to support solar projects. We're not taking away that ability for folks elected to be able to continue promises that they may have made on the campaign trail. But I'll give you another scenario that I think we're trying to address. You know, we've got clean energy goals, but we've also have, as a state, energy goals. If you look at the goals in the Clean Economy Act, they're not going to get us anywhere near Virginia's demand for electricity going forward in the future. And there's a lot of reasons for that. So we need some ability to bring projects forward at the local level to help meet that need. And then I think an example would be there can be, and I think everybody would agree, that development on marginal lands, development on brownfields, and development on sites that quite frankly are not good for agriculture should be brought forward. And so when you have a ban, whether it's a megawatt or an acreage or a density ban, then when there are good projects that are going to benefit the Commonwealth, that are not going to be impactful to neighbors, that are on lands that are not used for agriculture, we can't bring those forward. We just can't. And so there's an example of where you have a situation where a flat ban across a county does not allow for the best to come forward. And that's what we're looking for, is to get the best projects to come forward, which I think is a goal that I think everybody would probably agree with.
Senator Stanley, followed by Senator Rome, followed by Senator Hackworth, followed by Senator Aird, and now Williams-Grave. The list is growing.
It's a party.
I remind the committee that I also still have a bill to present at some point today.
Bill Schmill, guy. This is it.
Senator Stanley.
I'm speaking to the bill, but I must say that, when you look at that map that Mr. Lurch had, of course, I think it's pretty telling. in the areas that I've represented in the last go round before redistricting and the ones that I do now, we used to be the industrial powerhouse of Virginia. We created in the Industrial Revolution jobs. Pittsylvania County, largest county per square miles, used to have the highest per capita income, highest number of millionaires, highest education attainments. All of that area in Southside, which is now asked, and now it seems like through this bill being demanded to undertake solar projects, or once again, if this bill passes respectfully, we have the government telling us what to do. I'm reminded that when we were once great, the federal government began telling us in the North American Free Trade Agreement, the Central American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, CAFTA, that we needed cheap sneakers, cheap furniture. It would be great for us. And all of our jobs went overseas. And those that had the highest incomes were now unemployed. Families upon families that worked in the textiles lost their jobs, lost their retirements. And so instead of being the lowest unemployment rate in the Commonwealth of Virginia, now we're one of the highest. Instead of having the highest per capita income, now we're one of the lowest. And then they said tobacco was bad. And you couldn't grow it anymore in your farms. It used to be the cash crop in this area, this very area, the gold leaf. Then coal. Coal's bad. And in Southwest Virginia, we've seen the economy's depletion there as well. Every time the government tells us what to do with our land or how we should act, we in Southside and Southwest Virginia have lost. We've lost population. Our children are moving across the state to find jobs because there are none there. And instead, and the one time when we had uranium that would have been a boon, billions of dollars, that locality decided for itself, and we followed suit in the General Assembly to respect them to determine for themselves, even though the property owner wanted to do it so very badly that we weren't going to allow it to be mined. I think self-determination at the local level, especially in Southside and Southwest Virginia, should be left to the local governments, Mr. Chairman. I believe every time we dictate a one-size-fits-all answer for this area loses. And so although I have much affection for the patron, I think this bill is harmful for the good of the Commonwealth and the rest of us in Virginia who are working so hard to reclaim our position in the economy here as a leader in the economy in the future. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Stanley. I think we all felt that affection transferring. Senator Rome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to speak to the bill, but before I do that, can I request that Mr. Cushing give us the data on the 9 localities? What are the 2 with the blanket bans, and what are the I guess for the remaining 7? What are the restrictions they have?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Senator Rome, I just pulled a sample list. Lunenburg, no further development permitted. Clark, no further development permitted. Henry, 1% of land. Mecklenburg, 2,325 acres, which is about less than 1%. Pennsylvania, 2% of total acreage, but no 2 projects can be within 5 miles of each other. Isle of Wight, 2% of prime ag land. And by the way, there's a work group underway that's going to have some best practices on developing prime ag land and some setbacks and conservation. So that's in the process right now. Surrey, 10% of developable land. Nottoway is capped at the total electrical needs of Nottoway County. That's just a sample list. I'm sure VACO representatives can correct me if I misstated any of that, but that's what I've pulled.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Speaking to the bill, so under Jefferson's manual, I'm going to be obligated to vote for this today because the patron did make an amendment that I did request regarding, and I understand that obligated is a loose term these days regarding Jefferson's manual, but still. I did ask for the tree cover and stormwater management portions to be explicit, specifically to deal not only with the forestry industry here, but to deal with a very larger issue right now, which is the clear cutting of our woods. And if you heard me in general laws yesterday, talking about the problems of the data center industry and the havoc they have wreaked in my district specifically, all the energy issues that we're dealing with that we just heard about at the microphone, by the way, and all that, that's because of the data center industry. They are responsible overwhelmingly for the demand of electricity increasing in Virginia. All the data backs it up. Feel free, all of you have access to Google right now on your phones, look it up. You can look up those numbers over and over again. A distant second to that are EVs. And even in the EVs case, at least there's a trade-off. At least it's going from, basically burning fossil fuels as, in terms of gasoline or diesel to having a relatively less carbon-based, form of transportation there. But the larger issue here is when we destroy our woods, when we clear cut the woods, they are the single best stormwater management tool that we have. They're the single best carbon capture that we have. And not to mention on top of all of that, the thing I've stopped being tepid about and I started being a lot more explicit about is that we kill off the natural habitat for wildlife. And wildlife has absolutely no say at this microphone any single day. Ever, as we are dealing with this. They don't even know that they are relying on us to make the best decisions to make sure that they don't get killed off. And yet, in Western Prince William, they have been getting killed off because of corporate greed for nothing else. Corporate greed and money has taken out so many acres of Western Prince William that it is absolutely devastating to look at over and over again. That said, the reason I asked for the tree cover and the stormwater management to be explicit rather than implicit is so that we can do as much as we can to take care of that while at the same time meeting the energy goals of the Clean Economy Act. I think 4% is too high personally. I think it should be lower as a sign of good faith and the fact that the patron is willing to work in good faith. I will vote today to advance the bill and continue it with the understanding that we are still going to be workshopping this as it goes through the House, as it goes through whatever other the process puts before us today. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Senator Stanley informs that this is going to be re-referred to Ag and Animal Companion Sub now. Is that right? All right. Senator Hackworth.
We just announced we asked for it, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to speak very clearly on this because there's no greater friend to local government than I am on this board. Having been elected 2 times to serve at the Board of Supervisors, I have seen this come before us in Tazewell County, and I think some of the concerns from the opposition is not really founded because there is great local government control over these projects. That's why that I asked specifically the patron on the substitute. All this bill does is this says they cannot do a ban, total ban, to say there is no solar projects can be in our county. Now, having said that, having served on a board of supervisors, what happens in these instances is you have the NIMBY crowd or the Not in My Backyard crowd that shows up in numbers that says, we don't want solar farms. And that puts pressure on the Board of Supervisors to make these mandatory bans that now no permit shall be issued. They won't even look at it. We had a windmill issue in Tazewell County that gained national attention because it would have generated millions of dollars for our county. That would have been a boon for our county. We had people that it did not even affect that came out in droves that convinced our Board of Supervisors, because we don't have zoning, to pass a ridgeline ordinance, which was an ordinance that they couldn't be over a certain height, which effectively killed the windmills. What was heartbreaking in those hearings was we had property owners that came and testified that they owned land that they had for generations, tried to farm, tried to make profitable, and it was not profitable. And here was an opportunity for them to lease that land to these windmill companies, and now we effectively killed their property rights to be able to do that. If anybody on this board had thousands of acres, and you were told by your county you cannot even have a permit looked at, we would be upset, in my opinion. I would be upset because I feel like that the property rights, and this has some guardrails with it, the counties, there is 1,000 ways they can kill these projects. This just simply says they cannot say to a property owner in that county, we're not even looking at it. And most of that is generated by the Not in My Backyard community. So to all of my friends that may vote against this, I thought Senator Stanley from Franklin was going to vote for us when he was talking about not liking mandates. And, we fuss about the mandates about EV cars. Yeah, we are saying that we've got to have EV cars by a certain date, but yet we are okay with them mandating we can't sell our property or lease our property. I would say to my senator from Franklin, I think that's a bit hypocritical, but thank you, Senator Stanley. So I feel like if he had a property that wanted to be leased to a solar, that he
Mr.
should
Chairman,
at least have.
will Senator Hackworth yield for a question?
Senator
No, I will
Stanley,
not.
we have two more.
We have 2
two
minutes.
more speakers in the queue.
My question is just whether he's had his breakfast this morning, because he's a little cranky.
He has my cell phone number. We can do offline. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Hackworth. The Senate Democratic Caucus meets at 11:30. Senator Aird.
Mr.
Property
Chairman, I
rights
never
outcome.
thought I would be basically agreeing with Senator Hackworth. He said much of what I was going to say, and so I won't duplicate his comments. The only thing I will add is that as long as the two lines of support and opposition were today, it's the very same when I am in many of my rural communities. There's so much passion on this issue alone, both from individuals who believe, no, we shouldn't have this in our communities, and these private landowners who deserve the right to make the decision about how to use their land. And so the only point I will make without reliving what's already being stated is the fact that from those who were in opposition today, I heard a lot of emotion. We worry, we fear, we're concerned, but nothing based on the facts of what the language of this substitute says before us. And if we want to be real honest, this session alone, we did have legislation that wanted to actually force local governments to have significant numbers of solar projects placed in their communities. And we did not move that legislation forward. And so what is the balance? This legislation is the balance. It does not make a local community do anything. It does not restrict their ability to consider this entirely. And so at the end of the day, we have to do something. And this is a fair balance of how we can make sure that private landowners have their rights considered, especially given some of what I've heard about this, the economics of it, the taxes that some are facing, the burden of that. Well, at the end of the day, that is a private decision that they have and retain, and we have no business taking that away from them. And I think this legislation strikes the right balance to do so.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Williams-Graves.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would echo all of the sentiments in favor of this bill that have already been stated. I would challenge Senator Hackworth on his love for local government, having worked for the city of Norfolk for 10 years and served on city council for 10 years before coming to this body. I initially was not going to vote for this bill because I hate it when we have bills in the General Assembly that tell local governments what they have to do, and we act like we are the boss of local government when we are not. So I would thank the patron for the accommodations that have been made in the bill to show respect for the ability of local governments to govern according to the wishes of their constituencies, which really are our shared constituencies, but to do and allow to the local government and the local governing body what is right for them and not making them or forcing them. And again, there isn't anything in this bill that says you have to, and you're right, there are 6 ways to Sunday to kill something if that's not what you want to do that are not even outlined in this bill. So thank you so much for the bill and for the accommodation and for the amendments.
Senator.
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second to report Senate Bill 697 as amended. Clerk, open the roll.
Ayes 9, no 6.
That bill reports.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee.
Thank you. All right, next up is Senate Bill 597. I'm going to pass over the chair over to Senator Rome for me to present Senate Bill 597.
All right. All right, the floor is yours, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So Senate Bill 597, we saw this legislation last year. This was a recommendation from a 2021 JLARC study, would provide affordable housing needs across the state. It would allow local governments to adopt policies requiring developers of new housing to set aside a portion of units or sell below. It enables currently under the code, Madam Chair, it is permissible for the counties of urban county executive forms of government, county manager form of government, counties of Albemarle, Loudoun, and cities of Alexandria, Charlottesville, and Fairfax to provide affordable housing ordinances. What this does is instead of continuing to add localities, it strips that out and allows all localities to adopt ordinances for affordable housing. It's one of the most pressing needs. No area of our Commonwealth is exempt from affordable housing challenges. If you look at the charts and data and the latest reports, whether it's Southwest, Southside, Richmond, every area has these challenges. And frankly, it allows the tool in the toolbox to figure out what that local choice looks like. One area may have different needs than another. And so this is not prescribing a specific solution. It simply allows those localities to have that community outreach, the community input, and have those local ordinances developed of what meets that local need. So, Madam Chair, that is the bill. And again, it is a recommendation of JLARC. It did pass very significant margins out of the Senate last year, and almost the House, and was sent back at the last moment last year. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And so I'll give the patron credit on this for ideological consistency, as this is basically done the same way that the 1% sales tax to be used for school development or school construction is applied, which is also the patron's bill on this. So this is basically, in the spirit of Forestland, somebody's cutting down a lot of Christmas trees right now and trying to have a lot more open area, I guess. All right, we'll take questions from the dais here. Senator Williams-Graves.
I'm sorry, I just had a quick question. When you talk about affordable housing plans, would an example of that be a plan that included minimums for the number of affordable housing units, say in an apartment complex or in a development that a city might mandate? Is that something that would be eligible to be included in this bill, if we pass this bill for localities to do?
Senator Pike, and also a reminder, everything goes through the chair.
Yes.
Thank you.
It would be, Madam Chair, I would say yes. There we go. Thank you.
So, Madam Chair, I was speaking through you physically, so my apologies.
Yes, noted. All right, Senator Sturtevant.
And my apologies, Madam Chair, I do have a line amendment, 2 of them, to adopt from the committee I did bypass.
Council will report the amendment.
So, Madam Chair, I can read through those amendments as they're loaded. It's line 27, introduced after development, strike the remainder of line 27, all of lines 28 and 29 through housing on line 30, and insert based on a minimum ratio, and that just fixes to make sure where we have essentially market rate units that the current language read to a maximum, and so it's to a minimum. It's just more of a making sure it functionally works. And then the second, the beginning of line 43, introduce, strike all of line 43, which is simply and then the third, Madam Chair, is line 44, introduced after 11, insert allowance of a lower cost home construction alternatives, including manufactured homes and duplex manufactured homes, and 12. So it just reorders, it recognizes that there are other products, Madam Chair.
Question on that last part. So question on that last part. In our home of Prince William County, they do not allow further development of mobile home parks, for example. Would this legislation override that local ordinance?
Madam Chair, it would not. It provides for the toolbox of optional increases in densities and lists a number of different opportunities for those local governments to assess those.
All right. Well, then we'll take the motion to adopt the amendments. Committee?
Second.
All right. The amendments are now properly before us, and they've been adopted. Okay. So, Senator Sturtevant, you're still in the queue.
Thank you.
And a reminder, everything goes through the chair.
Yes, of course. Question for the patron is
Senator Sturtevant.
The law currently on the book was a Christmas tree bill, as the chair mentioned, and I think in the last few months, Alexandria and I believe Charlottesville exercised this authority, and they may have used a different term, and maybe it was the opponents of those efforts used the term of getting rid of single-family zoning in those localities. Is that what this bill is?
Senator McPike.
Madam Chair, I would say that I think the examples the senator is referring to is a zoning component change and not necessarily affordable housing, so it's completely different use of the zoning authority than what is being proposed here.
Follow up. Thank you. And a question is on lines 36 to 38. Subsection 7 of the bill. It says allowance of duplexes, triplexes, and quadruplexes in areas with primarily single-family detached homes for the purpose of providing affordable housing and creating mixed income home ownership options. And so I understand this is, I believe it's permissive on localities, but if a locality were to adopt this would allow the building of duplexes, triplexes, and quadruplexes on currently single-family detached home lots.
Senator McPike.
Senator Room. I'm sorry, Madam Chair, and to the Senator, yes, it is permissive in terms of a may, and obviously, much like any local zoning ordinance, has to go through the rezoning, the full public hearing process for each of those, the framework and process. And so this simply provides a larger menu of options that locality, and of course they, for every project, have to go through that open public dialogue.
And Senator McPike, would it be true then in that case that in Senator Sturtevant's home communities, they would not have to adopt these, any ordinance that would suggest that they have to have this, but in Prince William, if we wanted to, we could?
Madam Chair, yes.
Thank you. Okay, those who are in favor of the bill, please speak at this time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Joe Lurch with the Virginia Association of Counties. I want to thank the patron for coming forward with the bill. This does provide local options. Senator Sturtevant, to your question, it does say any combination of these. So it's not that it would, if you adopt this, you would have to adopt that section of it. And really, it's an availability for that locality to go ahead and mix and match these tools and find out what works best for them. We note that we did support trying to make this statewide a few years ago when Albemarle was added to that, and so this is just consistent with our policies. So thank you.
All right, let's put 3 minutes on the clock. All right, thank you.
Hello, I'm Laura Bateman, and I'm here today on behalf of the Virginia First Cities Coalition, and our 17 member cities have wanted the option to be able to do this. Some want to use it, some don't, but we're very supportive of the bill.
Thank you.
Good morning. Lauren Gilbert on behalf of the City of Richmond. Affordable housing tools are a high priority for the city, and we strongly support this bill. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. Isabel McLean with the Virginia Housing Alliance, and we strongly support this bill because this bill would give localities the option, it's just enabling, to establish effective inclusionary zoning programs or affordable dwelling unit ordinances specifically tailored to the needs of their jurisdiction. We know such programs can be really impactful. Research shows that at least 8,000 affordable units were produced by such ordinances in Fairfax, Arlington, Alexandria, and Loudoun just through 2019. So that's not counting what has been produced since then. We know that not all inclusionary zoning programs are created equal, but this really gives localities the best chance, if they want to have the most effective programs. So rather than waiting for individual localities one by one to petition for their inclusion in 2304 or having more of this authority, we should remove this barrier once and for all. Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Eldon James, Virginia Chapter of the American Planning Association. I want to thank the patron for bringing this forward. There is no one magic answer to affordable housing shortage. This is just one more tool and an opportunity for localities to be innovative in using that tool. Thank you.
1 minute left for 3 people, and we will not have overage.
Michelle Gowdy from the Virginia Municipal League. We support the bill for all the reasons stated.
That was a perfect testimony. Thank you.
Madam Chair, Randy Grumbine representing Manufactured Modular Housing Association. We've heard a lot this session about helping us create supply, and this bill will go to do that. And we thank the senator for adding the amendment, and this gives localities a tool to put in their toolbox. Thank you.
James Turpin, Coalition of High Growth Communities, and we support the legislation. Thank you.
All right, those who are opposed to legislation. 3 minutes on the clock, please.
I get the full 3?
You do.
Nice. Andrew Clark with the Home Builders Association of Virginia. I think everybody knows we've been up here plenty of times talking about trying to increase the supply of affordable housing, so it's obviously not in opposition to that. To date, the localities that have put this in place have not been able to show data that it has been a real boom for their affordable housing market. You can barely find data from Fairfax County or Loudoun County. A study done by George Mason shows it averages 100 units per year. So from the developer standpoint, you spend a lot of time and effort to go into a zoning case, and to Senator McPike's, there's a lot of great incentives on here that do make a significant difference to offset the cost of the below market rate units. Absolutely. Density, not so much the design control, but some of these other kind of things that make the developer be able to afford the below market rate units, they are discussed and agreed to by staff and then yanked away by the Board of Supervisors. And so you don't really get that incentive that makes the deals pencil out. And so a developer will maybe put 5 units here or 5 units there, and that just doesn't really seem like an effective solution. And so expanding this statewide seems like more of a way to kind of get localities to say, hey, we've done something on the issue, instead of really diving in and say, what can we do to solve the problem?
Question, Mr. Clark, would you be able to speak, what harm then would this do? Like if we were to adopt this bill, what actual harm would it create in that case? Because it seems what you're saying is that's what's been adopted in 2 localities has not, in your judgment, been effective. But at the same time, I haven't heard you say that this is going to create a new barrier or otherwise create a problem.
I think the impact is that, so if a developer is not given those incentives, sorry, Mr. Chairman, if the developer's not given...
Oh, no, it's me. I'm the chair right now.
All right, right. I couldn't remember who's. If the developer's not granted those incentives to make that deal pencil out, they just raise up the cost of the market rate units. I mean, that's how banks and lenders and investors are financing deals, based on the revenue coming in. And if you have below market rate units that are generating less revenue,
so do you don't
have those offsets that put more units in, you raise
Mr. Clark, would you have a proposed, either a proposed amendment or a proposed fix for that? You know, basically as this thing goes through the legislative process, like, is there a line or something that would address your concern?
Madam Chair, I would say that that requiring localities to offer these incentives and requiring that there be that the developers suffer no economic loss. So essentially that you come in and the incentives are equal to what it takes to balance out the market rate and the below market rate units, just as is in, I think, section 2304, the one that follows this one. That's the real hook for the private sector development community, is that boom, buzzer.
Okay.
Chair. Just when I was getting started.
Okay, so all right, there's a question from Senator Hackworth.
Yes, question for the patron. So this is
Senator
permissive, correct?
Yeah, this is permissive.
Thank you.
Okay, so here's going to be my ask. Hold on, Mr. Clark. My ask for you here is going to be to continue working with the patron here to see if you can address some of the concerns. Do we have any other questions from the committee, or did you, Senator Hackworth, have a follow-up?
Nope. Want to make sure it's permissive.
It would be, the motion would be to report as amended, but first from the patron.
Thank you. I appreciate Mr. Clark's comments, because I don't disagree. And it might sound strange as a patron, because ultimately, it is about the economics of floor area ratio and density, and frankly, that's how you structure incentives, and that's how local government ordinance should be crafted, is to work with the landowner and the developer. As someone who's developed, 64 plus units myself, it's all about what you can leverage and make the numbers work in the bottom line. And that's frankly what this is structured to do. And there are a lot of localities that have developed ratios or ranges of ratios that the developer can work with the local planning office to figure out where the economics work. And that's exactly what this does. We can't frankly prescribe something, Madam Chair, that's a one-size-fits-all. It has to figure out where that ratio, what the economic value of the land is. And so I absolutely agree with his remarks, and I understand his concern, which is someone pulling the rug out from underneath you. And I think that's an absolutely fair comment. But I think overall this is a tool in the toolbox to figure out the right fit for that right locality.
Mr. Clark, would you like to respond to that?
I guess to the comments before about this being permissive, I guess sometimes when we think about permissive, it's not permissive for the applicant, right? And just to clarify, maybe it's mandatory. And so, a local government can say, yes, we'll adopt it, but every project from there on out is tied into this program.
All right.
Anyway.
All right, we've exhausted debate on this. And Senator Williams-Gribbs, you'll have the last word before we go to the motion. Microphone on, please.
I just would like to say, Madam Chair, every time we come to the table with solutions for affordable housing, and please don't get me wrong, I love builders, I love developers, I make my living dealing with those people. But every time we come to the table with solutions that are not a one-size-fits-all, but allows localities to have some flexibility, work with developers, provide solutions that cumulatively will help to solve the affordable housing crisis. We do always hear from the builders, it's disappointing that there is a cost factor. And I understand that there is a cost factor, but we've got to do something. And so giving localities the ability to work with developers and create their own incentives is just simply one tool in the toolbox to be able to handle that, to be able to rectify our affordable housing crisis. So I renew my motion to report as amended and hope for a second.
Second.
All right, the motion's before us and it's been moved and properly seconded to report SB 597 as amended. The clerk will open the roll. Clerk will close roll.
Ayes 8, no 7.
Ayes 8, no 7. SB 597 reports, and with the request of the patron to continue working with one of the witnesses today. With that, I return it over to Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. I'm not planning to set a docket for next week, just for awareness. So we'll be working through as we get through crossover to free up time for other things that need to move next week as a general awareness. And so we'll start to stage up House bills the following week with rapid process. And I did want to make sure we had an opportunity. We have a new page that's helping us. If you can come up real quick and say hi, and thanks for helping us out today. Your name and where you're from. Come on up, microphone.
Hi, I'm Taurus in the Raman, and I'm from Prince William County.
Do you like data centers or do you hate them?
I'm sorry.
Thank you for joining, and the committee will rise.
The Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia.